I think I'll go with one of these Summit oil pan gaskets. I know it seems expensive, $85 for an oil pan gasket, but if you didn't have a windage tray already, then it doesn't sound that bad. If it doesn't leak, that's worth something. I don't think you're supposed to put any sealer on these except, where this seal retainer meets the block, you got a little crack there, so you just put a tiny little bit of RTV there, and where it meets the timing cover up front. So really, no sealer. Just use these O-rings or ribs, whatever you call them. Let's hope it doesn't leak. And I test fitted the dipstick. Of course, now we're all aftermarket parts. You've got to make sure this is going to fit. Most dipsticks don't fit the hole anyway. This one fit pretty good. This is that Mr. Gasket that's supposed to be the best. It's supposed to fit everything and do everything just exactly like you want. I measured the distance here. It's supposed to be, from what I'm told, 2 1/8 of an inch from the pan rail to the full line. Now, of course, the best way is when you fill it up and crank it up and shut it down to check the oil there. I'll put 7 quarts in it. I think that's proper, and we'll see if that matches up the full mark. Because most aftermarket dipsticks, they're just not gonna. You've got to check them because you won't know where you're at if you don't check it right when you do your build. So that's the plan there. These heads must be the star of the show. Kuntz down in Arkadelphia did an absolutely beautiful job on them. These are 452s, and which is like a 906 except with hardened valve seats. They measured every spring height, and they must have an ultrasonic cleaner to get them that clean. I'm going to go ahead and take the valve springs off and check the height on them. I'm planning on trying to find some break-in springs that are softer for the cam break-in, and I've got the tool coming to change valve springs after break-in. They even ran a tool around all of this to deburr it. They just did an absolutely beautiful job. I didn't really think that they were going to resurface them, but they also resurfaced them, and now that makes me, since we had to deck the block anyway, you got a fresh cut deck and a fresh cut head. That makes me wish I had some steel shim head gaskets to help on the compression a little bit. I'm kind of upset about that. That would give us a 1/2 point of compression if we ran steel instead of the. I prefer the Felpros because, you can have a little bit of waviness to a head, and the Felpro is a little more forgiving as far as sealing up, even though big block Mopars don't have a head sealing problem really, but you feel a little safer that way. They did a beautiful job, and they're perfectly clean. I was going to bolt these on before we cleaned it up to paint them, but I don't want to bolt these on anything until we paint. This is great. They did wonderful work. Okay, everything checked out great on the heads. We have 85-pound springs I tested springs on the valve spring checker there, and they're we're going to start out with those for the break-in, because they say you have to break in a cam right. And so we're going to do it like they say, so the cam will live. This cam shouldn't need enough spring to even worry about, but we're going to break them in, and then I've got a tool coming to change them after break-in, and this should be great. I went ahead and put the heads on dry. I didn't spray the head gaskets with copper coat, even though I always do, but Felpro keeps telling you not to, so I went ahead and took their word for it. We do have fresh deck, fresh head cut, you know, so we've got real good surfaces to work with. I had to replace one of the exhaust studs because it was missing, and then I masked everything off and got it ready to paint. I tried to use this Bill Hirsch like I used on the last couple of engines, but the paint got hard in there and I couldn't do it. So luckily I had some ABS that I'd seen Joe use on a few motors. It didn't work out exactly as planned. Once I started spraying, I could see that it was too thick, and at that point I had already started. It really needed some thinner, and I didn't know if I had exactly what I needed. They're calling that Street Hemi Orange, but I should have thinned it some. This was probably the worst paint job I could do. I just didn't have my act together. But we did get it painted. So now I'll unmask everything. I've got to take some paint off. These surfaces already had paint on them, so there was no sense in me masking them. I'll just have to clean these back up and take everything off and change the oil filter. It's just get it ready to finish it up. It looks like this Alumiblast paint is going to do a good job on the intake manifold. There must have been some contaminants underneath because it's kind of got it spotty looking there. But that's not going to be a problem. I'll just clean it all back up again and get it good and clean, and then this will give us a real good finish. The 600 Edelbrock carburetor will work good. Electric choke, stock stroke 383, the 600 should work fine. The great thing about it is we have a place to put the coil. If we had used a Holly, then of course it would be sticking out here and we wouldn't have a good place to mount the coil on the engine. But I think this is all going to work out fine. I'll just have to get this cleaned up better. We're going to use this ready to run or all-in-one, whatever they call it, this type of distributor. This one's from 440 Source. I have this version of the Pro Billet of theirs on my test stand, and I like it. It's just really simple because you don't have to have anything but 12-volt wire going to it for it to work. So no ballast resistor or anything like that. It just makes everything a lot easier. These are available with regular caps if you don't want the HEI terminals. They're reasonable. All of the electronics are inside, so you don't have to have a box. So it's just pretty convenient. Should make it easy. If I used a system with a box and all of that, trying to run it on a test stand would be kind of confusing. And this way, when we take it off the test stand and the customer picks it up, he knows it runs exactly like it ran in the video. He doesn't touch the carburetor or the timing or anything like that. He puts it in the car and pushes the button and it starts. And that's what people like. Now there's some things we have to do and some things we have to check because of the sequence of how all this went down. Normally all of this would have already been done as part of your build. In a real build, everything is done beforehand, not during final assembly. But I didn't have any heads, and so we kind of got started a little differently. Normally this lube would be on the cam and we wouldn't be worrying about this, but there's some things we have to do and some things we have to check. A lot of these checks are going to be because it's all aftermarket parts, And if everything went against you, then you could end up with some compatibility issues. If the base circle was different, it's an aftermarket cam. The base circle could be different. The lifters are aftermarket, so they could have a different cup height. The block has been decked, the heads have been cut, the head gasket is a different thickness, and all of this could work against you, but we don't anticipate any of that. We know that the block was cut 10 thousandths, and we guesstimate that they probably cut the heads 10 thousandths to clean them up. But we have a 20 thousandths thicker head gasket, so the rocker shaft is still in the same location to the cam as it was before. So that shouldn't be a problem. This camshaft is not a crazy lift where they had to cut down the base circle, so it should be pretty close to the stock base circle. We don't know the base circle on this cam. We don't know the base circle on a stock cam, so we don't know that for sure, but we're just guesstimating. Being hydraulic lifters, these aren't anything crazy. That's probably not a different cup height dramatically from a stock lifter. If all these things went against you, you could end up with improper lifter preload. You know, they want the lifter preloaded some, and if everything went against you, that might not work out. So in order to check this, we have to put the rocker shaft in, the lifters in, and the push rods in, and make sure that that's right. But everything's going to be fine. That's not going to be an issue. So that's the main thing that we're checking. That, and we're doing everything we can to give the cam a proper break-in. We're going to use the Comp Cam's cam and lifter installation lube, since this is a Comp Thumper cam. And we'll be putting that on the camshaft, and we'll be putting it on the face of the lifter. And we'll be using the driven break-in oil. This has got higher zinc than normal oil that you would use when you drive a car. We're going to do the camshaft break-in procedure on the test stand. I've heard Comp recommend a couple of different ways. There's the 30-minute variety, and there's the 10 minutes, then let it cool, and 10 minutes and let it cool, and 10 minutes and let it cool. I'll probably go with that one just because. They want you to start it instantly, bring it up between 2,000 and 2,500, and have good oil pressure. We should have good oil pressure. It's just got the stock bypass spring in it, which is around 55 psi. So we should have everything going in our favor. I'm going to use this acid brush and just brush some of the Comp lube on the lobes, and then I'll have to turn it a little bit, brush some more, turn it a little bit, and brush some more till I get all the lube on there, and then put all the lifters in, putting some of that on the face of the lifter, and then, you know, high pressure lube in the lifter cups, but that's not really part of the camshaft break-in, but you know, you do that. Then once we get the rocker shafts on, that's when we can finally check our lifter preload, and it should be just fine. Everything's going to be fine, I'm sure. Then we'll mark each lifter at 12 o'clock. After both shafts are in, push rods are in. The only thing we haven't changed is we have stock length push rods. Everything else is different. But we'll mark all the lifters at 12 o'clock. I'll turn the engine a couple of times, and then we'll come back and we'll see that every lifter is turning. You know that if one lifter is not turning, that it's going to go bad very quickly. So that's going to be a fail, you know. But I anticipate everything going good, and then we'll be ready to move on. Now I'll get all this done, and then we'll be able to do our test.